Everything I studied at Emory has had a direct impact on my skill set as a diplomat, whether it was psychology and trying to get into the mindset or understanding where other people are coming from, frames of thought. Linguistics, certainly, not only from the foreign language aspect, but like piggybacking off of something Lauren said about language and identity and conflict and oppression. Things like that are something we pay attention to as diplomats. Whenever we go to a country, you learn the language, but you also learn about the nuances of what dialects are spoken, what smaller languages are spoken, and how those can play a role in conflict. I spent 2 years living in Cyprus, one of the longest intractable conflicts in the world, straddling the lines between Greek and Turkish and a UN buffer zone. And in Taiwan, where the language was generally the same as mainland China, Mandarin as the dominant language, but any change in policy, one tweak of a word for a policy that's been consistent for decades could cause eyebrows to be raised, if not guns to be lifted. So language has been a huge part of my profession because of the studies that I went through at Emory.
This one course I took, I think it was my junior year, about language literacy and education really opened up my mind about the concept of literacy beyond just what reading and writing is. And so I think that course has really unexpectedly shaped the way that I teach literacy now as a teacher of third grade students. And it has reminded me that socio-political consciousness, which is something that's talked about a lot in this buzzword of like culturally responsive teaching, but that like you truly cannot teach literacy without this like wider encompassing definition of literacy in all of its forms. And I think that while there are so many like buzzwords around that with culturally responsive and linguistically responsive practices these days in education, like when it comes down to it, I was sort of like unexpectedly surprised that my linguistics coursework has come up so frequently in my daily teaching of literacy and the discussions that I have with my students about texts that we read. I knew I wanted to declare a major in linguistics when I just couldn't get enough of the coursework. Kind of like Jason was saying, it wasn't necessarily like an intentional, like, I am going to major in linguistics because this is going to directly relate to the career path I want. I think instead of like choosing linguistics as a field I wanted to major in that would therefore influence my career in the future, it's more that linguistics has actually influenced what I do in my career now, which is like focus a lot on culturally responsive and linguistically responsive practices in my classroom and in sort of the way I build community with students and families and the larger school community.
I wish I enjoyed it more. I was a pretty intense student at times. And you focus on your writing, focus on your test, your reports, and what have you. But I think I should have taken a little more time to smell the roses and interact more with interesting students. I think international students were increasing in numbers during my 4 years, two at Oxford and two at Emory, and I didn't really take the time to get to know them. But now working in the Foreign Service, I realized that especially your international student colleagues have such interesting stories to tell, if not just how they chose to come to America and study, but really interesting personal stories. So I regret that, and I hope that you guys will take the time to sometimes chillax, make time for yourself. Studies are important, but holistic health is important as well, and get to know the people around you, because you don't get so many opportunities as an adult to be in that kind of environment. It's really rich and really wonderful.
I think that for me, I wish I could go back and just kind of slow down and tell myself like less is more. I spread myself very thin as an undergraduate with the number of extracurriculars that I took on just because I was pretty obsessed with lots of them. I stacked up so much on my plate and I loved all of it. I did it because I loved it, but I think in hindsight, I wish I had just let myself have more time to sit on the quad and talk to people for an hour, in the gorgeous Atlanta sunshine.